How are you guys doing? Today is Thursday, May 26th, 2022. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile for Micah Parsons, the young elite outside linebacker for the Dallas Cowboys who's only played one season in the NFL, turns 23 today. And my intention with this episode is to, of course, give you a rundown of what Micah Parsons has been through from the moment he stepped foot on the big stage at Penn State to where he is right now, as he's already coming off of being the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. If you're not familiar with who Micah Parsons is, he stands in at about 6'3", 248 pounds. He's already been a very explosive force coming off the edge, and kind of understanding how tough it was to model, to even just resemble what he did in just his rookie season. Like, he was a deserved Pro Bowl as a rookie, and I do think that considering he's a rookie, he has a lot of room for improvement, and I can't wait to see where that improvement takes him. That's kind of my favorite thing about doing the profile of younger players. But as of right now, I imagine most of the NFL would agree with me that Micah Parsons is an elite talent within. But of course, I digress. Being originally from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he would go on to play high school football in Pennsylvania. And of course, knowing how intense football can be up in the Northeast, where it can be incredibly cold, he would go on to earn a scholarship to play at Penn State. So he wouldn't even have to leave the state and stay and play at a well-known, well-storied, well-cherished football program. He would go on to play at Penn State for 3 seasons. His very first season was in 2018, as 2018 was his age 19 season. And in that 2018 season, as a freshman, he would go on to play 13 games for a Penn State team that would go 9-4, finish as a top 20 team, and go all the way to the Citrus Bowl, where they would lose to Kentucky. In his very first year at Penn State, he would go on to finish with 82 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, a sack and a half, and even 2 forced fumbles. Even doing all that as a freshman, he will go on to show that he was definitely a force to be reckoned with. He was a freshman first-team All-American after his performance. Following his freshman season, he, of course, would return for his sophomore year, and in his sophomore year, he would go on to play 13 games in a season in which Penn State would go on to finish with an 11-2 record. That would be their best record that they had with Micah Parsons there. They would finish as a top 10 team and end up beating Memphis in the Cotton Bowl. So in that sophomore season, he would go on to finish with 109 tackles that season, as he also had 5 sacks. He would go on to force 4 fumbles and even recover 1, as that was the second and final college football season he played. After his sophomore season, he would go on to make the first team All Big Ten. He was named the Butkus Fitzgerald Linebacker of the Year. He was named a consensus All-American, not to mention that he was the Cotton Bowl Defensive MVP. And then he would go on to opt out of the 2020 seasons regarding the COVID pandemic. He would go on to make himself available for the draft after his sophomore season, in which he established himself as arguably the best linebacker in the country, which, of course, understandable. So he would go on to forego his junior season. In that year, Penn State would end up going 4-5 in a season where they just in a season that was kind of lost within college football. But after that third season at Penn State, which he kind of sat out, he was still the top prospect, one of the top prospects available for the 2021 NFL draft. In that draft, he was taken with the 12th overall pick, as he was the first linebacker selected. And of course, looking back, Trevor Lawrence was the first overall pick. Notable rookies that would go on to make the Pro Bowl within the first round would include Kyle Pitts, who was taken with the 4th overall pick by the Falcons. Jamar Chase, with the 5th overall pick, was taken by the Bengals. Parsons was the 3rd rookie who was drafted and who would make the All-Star game. Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle for the Chargers, was drafted 1 pick behind him out of Northwestern. Mac Jones, the Patriots rookie starting quarterback out of Alabama, would be taken with the 15th overall pick. And Najee Harris, the Pro Bowl running back for the Steelers, was taken with the 24th pick in that round, just to give you a sense of how talented the draft class he was drafted in was. And even out of all those players, him being the only defensive rookie to be named to the Pro Bowl in itself is a feat. But in his one season with the Dallas Cowboys, oh, yes, he was drafted by the Cowboys with the 12th overall pick, if I didn't mention it. But in his lone season with the Dallas Cowboys, he would go on to start all 16 of the games he played. In the first season that the NFL had teams playing 17, the Cowboys would go 12-5. They would go on to make the playoffs after not making it the previous 2 years in Mike McCarthy's second year there. Micah Parsons would be named the Defensive Player of the Year, as he literally went from being the best linebacker in college football to being a Pro Bowler and being the best defensive rookie in a 2-year stretch with a 1-year break in between. But in that season, he would go on to finish with 84 tackles in those 16 games. He had 20 tackles for loss. He had 20 tackles for loss. He would go on to finish with 13 sacks on the year, and he also went on to force 3 fumbles. By the end of the year, he would go on to make the first team All-Pro, naturally, of course. And he would go on to finish, like I said, he was a Pro Bowl in his first year. He was first team All-Pro in his very first year, NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. He would go on to win the Buckus Award, which is given to the top linebacker in America. And, of course, following that season, he would go on to finish second in Defensive Player of the Year voting, as the Defensive Player of the Year ended up going to TJ Watt. But that should give you a sense of how dominant Micah Parsons' one season is, and I do not believe that for 1 second that he's going to slow up. I can't wait to see what the future holds. But I didn't finish the season. As they went into the playoffs, they ended up losing 23-17 to the 49ers. And this, of course, brings us to the season right now where Parsons is entering his second season. I wouldn't be surprised if he signed an extension by the beginning of either the next season or the season after that. He seems like a player that the Cowboys most definitely want to keep in their franchise, keep at least on their good side for the near future at least. It looks as though after what he's been able to put up against the best football players in the world, I think Micah Parsons really does deserve his credit for that, and I can't wait to see what comes next for Micah Parsons. With that said, I want to thank everyone for listening to this piece. I do hope all is well. I will come back with more episodes of The Elite tomorrow once all of today's exhibitions and matchups are done, and hopefully by this time next year, I'll have another episode for Micah Parsons where I basically lay out what he's been able to do. So until then, I want to thank everyone once again for listening. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with more tomorrow. Thanks for listening to my piece. I'm James Sims. This is The Elite, and peace out.